Good afternoon. Welcome to Talking Trade Live with On the Tools. My name's Andy and I'm your host this afternoon. We're talking about, as you can see from the ticker at the bottom of the screen, going back to work in construction. Are you back? If you are back, is it residential or big sites? And what is the reaction? Is the social distancing guidelines being adhered to? Please get in touch, send in comments. We're going to read out as many as we can today. And joining me as my special guest is a lady called Fiona, who's in the health and safety sector. And she is going to be also answering questions. So if there's anything about that sort of topic, please comment. Hi, Fiona. Welcome to the show. Could you just tell the audience a little bit about yourself? And we're talking just a bit off air that you're not able to get out yet because of the social distancing guidelines.
That's right. I'm fortunate enough still to be able to work from home because obviously there's a lot of paperwork that can be done from home, that sort of thing. Also, a lot of our clients haven't yet returned to site. So, yeah. So I'm sort of I'm reading reports about how things are going on site, but I haven't sort of had first-hand experience yet of how things are going. But yeah, so I've been working in health and safety for about 10 years now, and in the last 2 years in construction. So,
and what do you feel? I mean, the last couple of years, things have obviously been very busy construction-wise, but also we've now had this unprecedented situation with coronavirus. Are you going to expect a huge change, especially on big sites?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, we've got the site operating procedures that have been drawn up by the Construction Leadership Council. And the main sort of issue, obviously, is the social distancing, because there are a lot of work practices that rely on people sort of being close together, you know, especially like team lifting, manual lifting, that sort of thing. And so how can that be overcome? So each sort of work task is going to have to be separately risk assessed, and everybody needs to be fully briefed about how to do the job safely. So to avoid social distancing, because there's a hierarchy of controls that the site operating procedures include, which says that you should use a face mask as a last resort, that social distancing should be the priority as far as possible. So you can imagine how difficult that's going to be to implement on site.
Well, my concern, Fiona, I do residential work, so I'm not on the big sites. I just do house extensions, refurbs, which is obviously very, very different to big sites. But I think my issue has always been, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but the people writing these guidelines haven't actually picked up a tool in their life. And we've got to look at reality. When there's hundreds and thousands of us working and working and working, I can guarantee that a lot of these are impossible to keep. They're impossible. Some comments are coming in now. Kevin McKerrow has said about keeping 2 meters apart when we go back to work. Can't even do it. People in the shops down the street. So what's the reality of actually having this distancing? Because I can think of loads of trades that can never do it.
Well, I mean, again, I'm going to hark back to the site operating procedures. There are measures that you can take if you're not able to stay 2 meters apart. For example, minimizing the time that you are close to each other. Trying to work in teams, in small teams, and keep the same people within those teams as well, so that there's minimum sort of interaction with all the other people on site. If you're working inside, obviously increase the ventilation. That sort of goes without saying as well. Also, if you do have to work within close proximity of people, try not to face each other. So sort of face away from each other, or sort of side by side, so that you're not breathing over each other. So there are, whilst it's sort of not always possible to stay 2 meters apart, there are other measures you can take. Also, if you are working within 2 meters of each other, then you should, if you have to, you should wear a face mask.
Well, Damien come in with a comment, which, well, to say that I'm not surprised at. He says he's back at work, expected to maintain 2 meters distance, got gloves, masks, one-way system on site. It's impossible, and disciplinary for repeated close contact. In reality, a lot of people are going to be facing disciplinaries on this.
I personally think that's a little bit unreasonable. They do say that additional supervision should be provided to make sure that people are sort of adhering to the controls. I think supervision and guidance is a better way forward than implementing disciplinary measures. Personally, I don't see what that would achieve.
My concern is, you know, I've been on the tools for quite a few years, and I'm a general builder, so I sort of cover, you know, I do carpentry, plastering, bricklaying. There's a lot of these things. There's no way in a million years we're going to be able to do keeping these guidelines in check. And the guidelines that have been set, have they initially come from government and then been passed on? Because, you know, my bugbear is these people need to go onto a site like you do, see the reality of this, and look at what actually is and isn't possible.
The guidelines have been drawn up with sort of consultation with sort of major operators in the sector, and they have had to reissue it 4 times now. Version 4 came out on the 18th of May, although the changes are quite minimal. In response to the fact that a lot of the measures weren't realistic, so they are constantly sort of, they receive feedback from people within the construction industry, and they do change it. So you have to sort of keep your eye out for the latest version.
Sorry, Fred, I do smile because I've worked with sort of governing bodies and federations, and there's a huge gulf between the workers like us on site that use our hands, that know what to do because we've been doing it all our life, and then there's obviously the let's say the suits who are sitting in their lovely offices putting together guidelines, which is great. But in your eyes, do you not think they should be speaking to men and women on site saying, right, this is what we suggest, what's the reality of this happening? Because then we can find a middle ground. That
should be happening anyway. With all sort of work procedures, method statements, risk assessments, they should all be drawn up with consultation with the workers to make sure that the measures are realistic and they can actually be done. So that is something that should be happening anyway.
I agree, it should be happening, but looking at the guidelines that have been set, I'm not quite sure how much they're listening to us workers, because, you know, the reality is there's Amanda Galbraith has sent a message in. Good question. What guidelines are there for workmen and women who need to go into up to 7 homes a day fixing boilers and electrical issues?
Right. Well, I mean, are they aware of these operating procedures? Because they do sort of explain what to do if you can't maintain that social distance.
I think what we'll do is we'll put a link up at the end of the show so people that watch it can have a look at these guidelines. I think because there's so many of us, you know, there's 2.7 million across all sectors in construction. There's a lot of us that probably are unaware of them, haven't been signposted necessarily by employers or federations or whatever we're part of. And, you know, I'm just looking at the comments coming through now. There's a lot of people.
I can see that somebody's telling me to put some headphones on. Do you want me to go and get some headphones?
If you
are you getting feedback?
Just the feedback, and I'll just mention a couple of comments that are coming in and do my best to answer them. So Fiona's just gone to get some headphones. I'm going to go through these comments and do my best as a general builder who, well, has been keeping his eye on things. That's as much as I can say. Gary Brown, HSE is a fast, tell site workers to go back and stop at home themselves. Yeah, we'll bring that up with Fiona, mate. I think a lot of people are saying the same thing about vans traveling to work. How many of us share a van? Crikey, all of us do. You know, you've got 2 people in the cab with you. Martin Holloway has said he's got a company van and he's going to expect to pick up 4 guys en route to work out the van. I mean, it's Fiona, what's the steer you've heard on this, the picking up and sharing a van? Because there's no way in a million years any social distancing is going to be withheld in there, but people need to get to work, and you can't take a mixer and a pallet of bricks on your shoulder on the tube.
No. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yes, all fine, Fiona, all fine.
Okay. Journeys should be shared with the same individuals if possible. So you should always be traveling with the same people. And obviously with the minimum number of people at any one time. Also making sure that you have the windows open in the van so that there's good ventilation, facing away from each other, and just making sure that the vehicle's cleaned regularly. So using gloves, standard cleaning products, with particular emphasis on handles and other areas where passengers touch the surfaces. So yeah, it's not realistic to expect that vans can't be used, but if they have to, then obviously there are measures you can put in place to minimise the risk. I mean, obviously there's not going to be there's never going to be zero risk. The government keeps saying this. It's to manage it as far as possible.
Well, Stephen Dawson said a point which all of us trades think. Some sites are spot on with health and safety, some not so. So we can't see anything changing with COVID-19. And the point I like is once deadlines come close, everyone's expected to all work on top of each other. You hope this isn't the case going forward. But when you got your big bosses saying this needs to be finished by X, it's all hands to the pump. Is the 2 meters going to go out the window?
I mean, this is where my job comes in, because if I go on site and see that measures aren't being adhered to, or people aren't working safely because they're under pressure, my priority is to make sure that health and safety comes first, and I'll ensure that the management are making sure that everybody's working safely regardless of targets, deadlines, that sort of thing. Health and safety should always come first before profit, at the end of the day. So yeah, that's sort of where I come in. And unfortunately, I think the HSE has suspended routine inspections at the moment, but they can be contacted in the event that people aren't being allowed to work safely.
Well, I think another thing is as well, if you were to go onto a site and clearly see people tripping over each other to get stuff done because they're under a lot of pressure by the foreman or the site manager or whoever's running the job, what can be put in place to get these men and women a bit of breathing space so they don't have to literally call over each other to get it done on time?
Well, part of an employer's duty is to make sure that not only is the workplace safe, but access to and from it is also safe as well. So that should be a given anyway. People shouldn't be tripping over each other, and there should be ample space for people to move around. The housekeeping should be good so that there's no slip or trip hazards, that sort of thing. So that is something that should be in place anyway. But it's just something that site managers are going to have to stay on top of, and it will have to come first before anything else, before deadlines, targets, that sort of thing.
Well, Stephen Dawson has come out with a comment which everybody that works on a site is going to read and go, yep. How many times are people told to put things in place because we've got a health and safety visit? Is there ways of health and safety? I know you can do impromptu visits, but a lot of the big sites obviously do exactly as Stephen has said, get everything ship shape. We've got a visit.
No, we don't announce our visits. We turn up and surprise them. And
well,
the welcome is not usually warm either.
Well, I've heard that, but it does seem a lot of these sites have just seemed to have got the somehow know about it because stuff's always in place just before you turn up. So
no, it very often isn't.
Well, let's move on to sort of mental health, Fiona, how you can sort of help and advise with this, because you do toolbox talks on big sites about mental health. It's obviously Mental Health Awareness Week. We did a show last week where we've mentioned the brilliant charity, The Lighthouse, which Bill and his team run. Can you explain a bit more about what you do, but also sort of any small tips which people watching can take away with them?
Yeah, so part of my job when I do health and safety inspections is to deliver toolbox talks for the site management. So, I mean, obviously that's something I can't really do at the moment because usually it involves 15 or so lads being in a cabin in close quarters. So unless you can get everybody to sort of stand outside 2 meters apart, it's quite difficult to manage. But hopefully this is something that can be implemented again as soon as possible. This was something that I recently implemented because I was aware of the issue. And And I was slightly nervous about doing it because there is a stigma associated with it, and I wasn't sure how the lads would react. But it was very positively received. I was quite surprised, actually. It doesn't always go to plan. You kind of have to do it on their terms. There's a lot of joking and banter and taking the mickey out of each other, but at least you've kind of opened up the topic and people are engaging. So you've sort of opened up the topic and sort of made it an acceptable thing to talk about. And also, I mean, the other thing I've noticed on site is obviously banter. And there's a fine line between banter and when that turns into bullying. And I have seen that firsthand. And people who are on the receiving end of that need to know that they can go and talk to somebody about it without being judged. And the Lighthouse charity have introduced 5 steps to build a better mental health culture. And I don't know if people are aware of it, but you can go onto their site, the Lighthouse Club charity. Do you want me to briefly go through the 5 steps?
Yeah, just quickly. It would be good to hear.
Okay.
They've been sending them out on email each day, but I'm sure a lot of people haven't been getting them.
So one is and this is all on the Lighthouse charity website. The first one is to sign the Building Mental Health Charter. So you're agreeing to make a commitment to improve mental health. You can order a helpline pack, which includes posters and cards, and you need to promote the free 24/7 helpline. Which I don't know if you'll be able to share the telephone number for that. I've got the telephone number.
Put that on, definitely.
Okay. Delivering toolbox talks, as I've said, the Lighthouse charity do have a toolbox talk, but there are others on the web which might be more suitable for your particular workforce. And it only needs to take 10 minutes. It's just opening up the subject. Offer employees who manage people the opportunity to complete mental health first aid training. That's very important. There should be one mental health first aider for every 100 employees.
Can I just quickly ask you, Fiona, a mental health first aider? Now, I've not been ashamed or embarrassed to talk about my mental health problems in the past. Now, I've spoken to a lot of people in the industry that do talks on mental health, and I find there's a huge difference between the ones that have suffered, talking from their own personal experience, how they came through it, and now what they're doing almost to give back, and then the ones that have been on a 2-day course. So do you feel, because it's relatively an unknown illness compared with breaking a leg or something, do you feel that, again, we should perhaps be encouraging more people that have suffered to come forward and talk, because then they can see things a lot clearer than someone that's been on a course for 2 days?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are sort of requirements to be a mental health first aider, a lot of personal qualities as well. You need to be able to have the confidence to step in and reassure somebody who's in distress. You need to have enhanced interpersonal skills, such as non-judgmental listening, that sort of thing, and the knowledge to help someone recover their health by guiding them to further support, such as their employer, the NHS, or the helpline. So it's not just a matter of attending a 2-day course. You do sort of need to have certain qualities that go with that, even if you haven't been through an issue yourself. But from what I can gather, most people have been through some sort of mental health issue in their life. So they will be able to relate to people on that level.
Well, the good news coming through, Anthony Weiler's been in touch with one of the comments. He has health checks on site asking questions about mental health. So it's good that wherever he's working, those questions and sort of health checks are coming through. One thing I've found from speaking to people with mental health problems is you're just there to listen. And I found when I first literally let it all out years ago, I didn't want someone to judge me or tell me anything. I didn't want someone to say, right, you need to do this. Tomorrow you need to get up and do that. The first thing is purely a release to get it off your chest. And then to have that person literally just listen is a big, big thing. And I think that's what I've found in the past of having a 9 o'clock on a Tuesday morning mental health visit. People may not necessarily open up then. They'll do it in their own time. So I think that's key, that when you're having a cup of tea with your mates at work, well, obviously 2 meters away, but somebody might want to talk. And it's a good thing just to listen, as hard as it is.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, I mean, the toolbox talk is people might not necessarily engage, but it's opening up the topic, and it's it's telling these people it's okay. It's not a taboo subject. There's no stigma. A lot of people suffer from this, and you should be able to talk to your mates. Without in reality, whilst there is a lot of banter on site, it tends to be a small number who are the perpetrators, to be honest. So yeah, and very often they have issues themselves. So.
Well, it is, and the good thing is the stigma's lowering, but the way of dealing with it isn't. And the journey I went through, being brutally honest, I found the NHS so understaffed and under-equipped for it. It's frightening. The CBT course I did was from God knows the 70s or something, very, very old. It's very difficult. And again, me being open, when I was with the mental health team in hospital, the head doctor said to me, the only way you'll get treatment for mental health on the NHS is if you try and take your own life or you start self-harming. And that was from the team leader on the mental health in my local hospital years ago. And
unbelievable.
Yourself, if someone at the moment, look at it, redundancies, are we going back to work? Are we not? Mental health bill from the Lighthouse said calls have gone up 55%. So I think if people are watching this and they're uncertain, give the Lighthouse a call. There's a number we'll put up in a bit. It's a 24 hours a day, 7 days a week number, and they are superb. And I think as well, Fiona, would you agree that the stigma's dropping, but there's still maybe not the same mindset about it? It's still, where was it? So we had a comment come in, Dwayne Gardner, and again, this is something I've seen. All sites are the same. It's a man's world. Get on with it. Man up. Blah blah blah. That's got to stop.
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing that. There are some sites where it's more prevalent. It depends really on the company. I suppose small companies and small businesses, it tends to happen more. But it's not just the on-site banter and stuff like that contributes to issues. It's the nature of the job. It's a high pressure environment. A lot of people are away from home, from their friends and family all week, on their own in a room during the night. And also job insecurity is a huge factor that comes into it. But obviously this is all being impacted by this anxiety over returning to work as well. There was a YouGov poll carried out which discovered that 44% of UK workers were feeling anxious about going back to work because of the risks posed by COVID-19, and also commuting as well. That's a factor. So there are a whole load of sort of things contributing to it.
Well, when trades were told to use public transport to go to work, I mean, that to me, I mean, that's, I like a good joke.
No, they were told not to use public transport.
The one, because I saw Boris's thing last Sunday, because I was doing a bit for one of the papers, and the general consensus was that the directions for us weren't clear. And I think still, if you asked us, asked 100 people across the industry, it's still not that clear. And loads of people are saying the reality, you're trying to pick something up that's a certain way, you've got to be closer than 2 meters. I'm thinking my residential stuff, there's no way we can do some of that stuff. It's, if there's a lot of examples, but I think the reality, we've got to use our own common sense here, because some of the guidelines aren't where they should be.
Yeah, you have to do. I mean, I know it's a hell of a lot to think about on top of everything else that you've got. But you do have to do a risk assessment for each job, and then that draw up the necessary control measures. So a lot of risk assessment will have to be rewritten in view of the COVID-19 and the social distancing, and it's a lot of hard work that'll have to be put in place. To do it, but it needs to be done. So the groundwork, it'll groundwork, sort of, pardon the pun, it will actually pay off. Just do all the risk assessments, make sure everybody's clear, make sure it's realistic. If you can't maintain a distance, there are other measures that you can put in place from the site operating procedures, and just take it from there, really.
Well, there's a question I'd like to ask you, Fiona, because I've had it from mates that work on big sites. Dwayne Gardner's said exactly the same. Um, in reality, the site manager has to give toolbox talks too. He or she says, "I'm here for a chat," when in reality, he's the bully on site. So what can workers do where they've got someone that's chucking their weight about as the bully when they are the ones they should be able to turn to? You know, being told to man up and get on with it and get this done by Friday or you're off the job. You know, that's sadly what's going on. I know people don't like to talk about it, but there's a lot of it happening.
Well, that shouldn't be happening. And as I said, there are people that you can go to. You know, there's the HSE, for example. If you're being made to work unsafely, and everybody has rights as well. There's the old Section 44 of the Employment Rights Act, which allows you to challenge site managers if you know, if measures aren't in place, and that includes workplace stress as well, not just safety. All employees have a duty to manage workplace stress. So if they're sort of failing in that respect, then you have every right to sort of go over their heads to somebody else and report them.
I think
it shouldn't be happening.
No, I think what I'd like to see more of, and is someone that's been on the tools and seen it from sites to residential, is maybe sort of try and sit in the middle here, because there's always been a huge divide between your workers on the site and then your suits in the office. There's to bring them together is you know, is chalk and cheese. Do you think there almost needs to be someone in the middle that can sort of bring these together, because we all want to work in safer conditions at the end of the day?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I do technically. So it's ideally all companies should have somebody from the outside, an independent health and safety advisor. I know that's not always realistic or affordable, but you should try and, you know, you should have somebody who's providing sort of competent health and safety advice, and that can be the person who regularly comes onto the site, and they do very often act as a sort of like a channel in between the workers and the management. Because very often if I go on site, I'll get a crowd of lads around me all complaining about everything. You know, they're not letting us do this, they're not letting us do that. And I do then go to the management and say, look, you know, this needs to happen. And they do listen to me. And I have seen improvements on site as a result of that. So that would be my recommendation. Get somebody like me.
Well, Fiona, unfortunately, we've run out of time. It's flown by, as it always does. Thanks ever so much for
thank you very much. It's been enjoyable.
We're obviously not in a great time in construction or any industry, but the great thing with us is we're bloody hard workers and we just get on with it. And I think out of all industries, we're going to get through it probably fighting a lot harder than some. So thank you for joining me. And
thank you very much. You're welcome.
We will be back as well on Thursday for another Talking Trade with On the Tools.